Here are 101 facts about Lamborghini. And by the way, Lamborghini might be the craziest, most nonsensical bro company out there. You'll know what I mean. Number 1. Lamborghini only started using scissor doors or Lambo doors because the Countach had an unusable rear window, and having scissor doors would allow the drivers to lean out of the cars while reversing. But it looked so cool that Lamborghini decided to keep using them. Basically, scissor doors were a solution to a problem that they created. Number 2. If it wasn't for a Ferrari clutch, Lamborghini might have never existed. I'll explain. This is Ferruccio Lamborghini, and he was a rich Italian guy who owned a tractor company. He also loved and owned a lot of cars, one of which was a Ferrari 250 GTE, and that car gave him a lot of trouble, especially with its clutch. So one day, Ferruccio was fed up and marched into Enzo Ferrari's office, telling him his cars were rubbish and he could fix his clutch issues very easily, to which Enzo replied, "You're just a silly tractor manufacturer. How could you possibly know anything about sports cars?" Insulted and extremely Italian, Ferruccio spat on the floor, stormed off, and created Automobili Lamborghini in 1963. Number 3. Car designers draw inspiration from a lot of different things, like sharks, planes, snakes, and even elements like fire. But surprisingly, when the designer of the Aventador was asked about what inspired him, he said, and I quote, "Those shiny green jagged-like beetles that smell real bad when you step on them." Real classy. Number 4. Okay, now this is a fact that has driven me mad and created an unscratchable itch. Pretty much all Lamborghini engines are slightly misaligned in the engine bay. Now I could have kept this fact for myself or placed it at the end of the video, but I wanted you to suffer with me. Number 5. Lamborghini invented the supercar with the Miura in 1966. Let's start from the beginning. In the 60s, Lamborghini exclusively hired young, fresh-out-of-college graduates because Ferruccio wanted his company to think boldly and outside the box. And one day, the kids got together and designed the chassis for a two-seater mid-engine V12. Proud of their accomplishment, they showed it to Ferruccio, who actually didn't like it. But he decided to give them a shot, so he called up Bertone and asked for a designer, and they sent him Marcello Gandini, who later on became a legendary car designer. But when he met the guys at Lamborghini, it was his first day on the job. Anyways, he ended up designing the Miura in just 2 days. And a couple of months later, the first supercar in the world was unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show. Number 6. The most fun thing about buying a new car is showing it to your friends, usually with a beer in your hand, and Lamborghini knows that. That's why the new Revuelto has a mode which is officially called bar mode, and it's used to raise the wing when the car is at a standstill for that "oh damn" moment from your friends. Number 7. The Countach is the most iconic Lamborghini, especially with its cool, massive wing. But interestingly, no Countach ever left the factory with the wing attached, because Lamborghini couldn't get it to pass regulations, so they decided to play the system. And they hired some guy to install the wings in the parking lot next door. Number 8. Lamborghini started using fighter plane-style ignition switches in 2011, which were pretty damn cool, but their owners didn't agree, and they started to complain, saying that flipping the switch every time you got in the car was tedious and annoying. And since Lamborghini didn't want to remove it, they sat down on the couch and gaped the hole, so you could insert your finger without completely flipping its top. Number 9. In the early 70s, BMW decided to build the M1, but they didn't have the necessary know-how and expertise to do it themselves, so they hired the then very desperate Lamborghini to develop it for them. And with a freshly printed new contract, Lamborghini ran to the Italian government and took out a loan to build the car. Initially, everything looked great. The wedge-shaped BMW was designed and it was starting to take shape with a few prototypes, but it all went downhill from there, because Lamborghini apparently allocated most of the funds towards building a military vehicle for the Americans, which got them sued because they had copied another company's design. So they had to build a completely new military vehicle from scratch, only to be rejected by the Americans. And when the dust was settled, Lamborghini had filed for bankruptcy and had defrauded both the government and BMW. And to make things worse, Lamborghini refused to hand over the prototypes and schematics for the M1. But BMW wasn't going to let it slide. So late one night, they loaded up a couple of trucks with angry Germans who broke into the Lamborghini factory and stole back all of the BMW's prototypes and files, continuing their project like nothing had ever happened. Number 10. every Lamborghini since 1963 has been sold with Pirelli tires. Number 11. You might have noticed that Lamborghini loves to use these slotted rear windows, even though they're not that practical, because they allow dust and all sorts of things into the engine bay. Well, those windows are actually a nod to their original supercar, because back when they were working on the Miura, they couldn't for the life of them figure out a way to stop the rear windows from fogging up when the engine got warm. That's when they decided to just cut slots in them. Number 12. The Lamborghini Diablo used to offer an optional dashboard clock made by the Swiss watchmaker Breguet. But you'll probably never see a Diablo fitted with this option, since only a couple of people opted for it. And it wasn't because it was ugly as hell and cost $10,000. No, it was because that clock was manual, meaning you had to set the time and manually wind the watch every single time you got in the car. And if you think that's stupid, boy do I have a couple of surprises for you. Number 13. Forged carbon was invented by Lamborghini in the mid-2000s. Well, they aided its invention by funding the guy who invented it, because Lamborghini needed composite materials to be cheaper, since they used so much of them in their cars. Number 14. A couple of years ago, Sterling Backus and his 12-year-old son started to build an Aventador replica by 3D printing its parts in their garage, because his son always loved Aventadors and wanted his father to own one. And when Lamborghini heard about this, they sued the shit out of them and ruined their lives. Oh no, sorry, I forgot this isn't a Ferrari video. Lamborghini actually called up Sterling and offered to surprise his son for Christmas by sending a full team in the middle of the night to replace their Aventador in the garage with the real thing. And not just that, Lamborghini even told them to keep it for a couple of weeks. Now, Lamborghini, like any other brand, doesn't condone counterfeiting their products, but they said that a true story of such authentic passion deserves to be rewarded. Well done, guys. Number 15. One of the coolest dudes behind Lamborghini's success in the early days was Bob Wallace, the chief test driver at Lamborghini from 1963 to 1975, and he was the man behind cars like the Miura and the Countach. He was also a madman, because in the early days, Lamborghini couldn't really afford all the testing facilities they have now. So Bob would go out late at night and push the cars to their absolute limits in real-life conditions. I imagine he outran a few cops in those sessions. Number 16. Every Lamborghini engine has its firing order displayed on the cover. Number 17. Now I want you guys to make sense of this since I genuinely can't. This is the Huracan STO, and STO stands for Super Trofeo Homologated, meaning it's a race car that was sold to the public to adhere to racing rules. So far so good, right? Well, the only issue is, the STO only competes in one series, the Super Trofeo series. And that series is completely owned by Lamborghini, meaning they make the rules. So why the hell did they force themselves to follow a rule that would technically cause them to lose money? I'd love to hear your take. Number 18. Lamborghini misspelled the word Sirius on the Diablo's sun visor, which is pretty embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as misplacing the accent on the Huracan's name. Lamborghini should really check their facts. Not that I'm one to talk. Number 19. Ferruccio Lamborghini was the exact polar opposite of Enzo Ferrari most of the times, but sometimes he did borrow some of Enzo's moves, especially when it came to the Miura. You see, the Miura was a massively big project, especially for a company like Lamborghini, meaning they were bound to make mistakes. And Ferruccio knew that. That's why he decided to deliver the cars to their Italian customers before delivering them overseas, because those customers would be able to bring the cars back to the factory for servicing. And when they inevitably did, actually, when they immediately did, Ferruccio would personally take them out for some long dinners, giving his staff enough time to completely take those cars apart, sometimes even making major structural changes that they never told the customers about. Because Ferruccio didn't want anyone to ever find out how royally screwed up and poorly designed the first few models were. In fact, Lamborghini were so desperate to keep their customers happy that when Miuras burned down, which they loved to do, Lamborghini would build a completely new Miura and swap over the VINs, so their owners wouldn't have to pay the sales tax, which is fraud, by the way. Like, that's the definition of fraud. Number 20. Have you ever wondered why Lamborghinis have those weird dividers in their frunks, even though they can hardly fit anything? Well, they do that because if the space is small enough, they can legally get out of installing emergency trunk releases, which is totally fine since those dividers are removable. Except when it comes to the Centenario, because it has a solid metal bar smack dab in the middle of its tiny frunk. Number 21. In the 1963 Turin Auto Show, Lamborghini debuted their first ever car, the 350 GTV. And people were surprisingly interested in the new Grand Tourer, especially since Lamborghini claimed it had a 3.5-liter V12. I say that because they refused to open the hood and showcase their marvelous V12. Well, we now know why. Apparently, it had bricks under the hood. Like actual physical bricks, because the 350 GTV was designed and built in 4 months. And in the rush of things, Lamborghini miscalculated the size of the engine, meaning it physically didn't fit inside the engine bay. But they were able to fix that issue for the production model. Number 22. For some reason, there are code hooks inside the Diablo, in a place where there is absolutely no room for anything. But since it was so unbelievably stupid and useless, Lamborghini decided to put them in the Aventador as well. Number 23. In the 70s, Lamborghini's electronics were so questionable that cars from that era came with holes in their doors, alongside a tool that would allow you to roll down the windows manually when the motors inevitably broke down, which is honestly quite thoughtful. Number 24. The Revuelto, which is a hybrid, can drive in all-electric mode for 40 miles only. Sorry, 4 miles. Wait, really? Number 25. This is the highest mileage Lamborghini and the highest mileage supercar in the world. It's owned by this guy, Simon George, a businessman from the UK who, just like everyone else, always dreamed of owning a Lamborghini. So back in 2004, he decided to take out a loan for the down payment of a brand new Murcielago. But after a while, Simon couldn't afford his monthly payments, and since he didn't want his car to get repoed, he started renting it out to just scrape enough money to keep his pride and joy. And yes, Simon himself knows how stupid that was, but he is still very proud of his poor impulse control, because that car gave him the idea to start his own exotic rental company, Sixth Gear. Now it's time for the important question. How many miles does this Lambo have? It has 296,000 miles, and it would have been much higher had it not crashed into a tree back in 2012, but it was rebuilt a couple of years ago. And just to continue with the theme of terrible financial decisions, the rebuild of this Lamborghini, which is worth $80,000 on a good day, cost $150,000. Someone should really take his credit card away. Number 26. Lamborghini has only sold 27 different models in 61 years, and they've only made around 100,000 cars in that period, with over 20,000 of them being the Urus. And just to compare apples to cockroaches, Peugeot made 1 million cars last year. Number 27. You know how most brands place their limited edition badges directly in the view of the driver, so they'd know they're driving a special car? Well, Lamborghini places them in the view of spectators, because they know their drivers tend to be unpleasant and insecure. No offense. Number 28. This is the ever-so-weird-looking Lamborghini Espada, which is a roided-out hatchback that has a cargo cover and a big antenna. It also has tiny back seats where only children could sit. And for some weird reason, Lamborghini gave the kids an ashtray and a cigarette lighter. But for once, this weird Lambo has an even weirder feature that's actually really useful. It has 2 different gas caps which both connect to the same fuel tank, meaning you could fill it up from either side. Number 29. In the early 70s, Marcello Gandini and Bob Wallace were working on the Miura's replacement, and they had a staff member who only spoke Piedmontese. That staff member also had a habit of being easily amazed at everything, so his catchphrase around the office was "Kuntash," which literally translated to "the plague," and it was the equivalent of saying "my goodness." So late one night, Marcello Gandini started calling their project Kuntash as a joke. So Bob Wallace played along and wrote it out on the back of the car, again as a joke, and it didn't become the car's official name until multiple people said that they genuinely liked it. Number 30. Let's get back to some Lambo logic. In the 60s and all the way up to the 80s, Lamborghini placed bars in their passenger footrest so people could rest their feet on them, even though they'd be way more comfortable without them. Number 31. The Italian police use Lamborghinis to transport organs, and not just that, they were able to break the record for the fastest organ transport in 2020 by transporting a kidney from Padua to Rome with an average speed of 233 kilometers an hour, cutting down the 5-hour commute to just 2 hours. This has to be the best and most stressful job in the world. Number 32. The Lamborghini Yalpa had 2 clocks on its dashboard because their owner's time was valuable, especially since they had to spend half their day trying to figure out which clock was right, since they weren't connected and they regularly fell out of sync. Number 33. Believe it or not, the Lamborghini Huracan is among the most reliable supercars of all time. And based on Consumer Reports, please don't kill me for this, the Huracan is actually more reliable than the GTR. And in the GTR's defense, please settle down. In the GTR's defense, Huracan owners probably don't drive their cars nearly as much, meaning they usually have less miles on them. But they're still better built. Number 34. Ferruccio Lamborghini was an astrology nut. For those of you who don't know, astrology is the lack of science behind generalized sentences that make you believe you matter in the universe. Anyways, Ferruccio's star sign was the Taurus, and its symbol was a bull. That's why the Lamborghini logo captures the moment before a bull attacks. That's also why a lot of Lamborghinis are named after famous fighting bulls. Number 35. Lamborghini has always used manual dogleg transmissions, meaning reverse was where first usually is. And Lamborghini did this because it would make shifting from first to second much smoother. But doglegs are a bit tricky, because you might shift into reverse by mistake and total your drivetrain. That's why most brands have shift locks that stop you from doing that. But of course Lamborghini did it in their own way, by adding manual shift locks, meaning you had to physically lock and unlock it. Although Lamborghini did fix that later on by adding the weirdest lockout possible, where you had to push down and turn the lever to go into reverse. Reverse was just not an option if you had arthritis. Number 36. The Miura's badge has 2 horns and a tail, making it the cutest little angry bull ever. Also, next time you see a Lamborghini, start looking for the bull horns, because they're everywhere. Number 37. In the 60s, Ferruccio hired Giotto Bizzarini to build his V12. By the way, Bizzarini used to work at Ferrari and built cars like the 250 GTO. Anyways, when he was hired, Ferruccio offered him a bonus for every horsepower his engine made more than Ferrari's, and Bizzarini delivered with his 358 horsepower quad-cam V12. But there was an issue. You see, this engine was built at a time when Lamborghini was aiming to build a comfortable, reliable Grand Tourer. And since Ferruccio didn't specify how Bizzarini needed to make more power, he immediately fired him after hearing that it revved up to 9,800 RPM, basically making it an F1 engine. But as it turns out, the kids at the factory really loved that engine and they thought it was cool. That's what gave them the inspiration to build the Miura. And fun fact, modified versions of that same engine were reused up until the Aventador, meaning the Aventador was the first Lamborghini to use a completely new V12 in over 50 years. Number 38. Back when Lamborghini was relatively a new company, they saw rapid success, especially in the first decade, and it seemed like their fire was never going to go out. That's until the financial crisis happened in 1973. Desperate and terrified, Ferruccio sold 51% of the company that same year. But things kept getting worse, which pushed him to sell the remaining 49% of the company a year later. Then it changed hands a couple of times until it was acquired by Chrysler in 1987, who then sold it again to another company, which in turn sold it to Volkswagen in 1998. Because buying Lamborghini would have been much cheaper for VW than trying to build the Audi R8 in-house. And under Audi's leadership, Lamborghini thrived to become one of the most powerful brands out there. Number 39. The rear end of the Revuelto resembles a bull's face when the third brake light is on. Number 40. Now if you ever get up close and personal with a Lamborghini, you'll notice these 6-sided shapes, also known as hexagons, everywhere. And I mean everywhere, even in the infotainment system. And what do they mean? We don't know. Lamborghini has never provided an explanation. So people have been claiming it's a nod to their use of carbon fiber and how carbon is the 6th element. But I don't believe that. I genuinely think that somebody at Lamborghini really loves drawing hexagons. Number 41. In the 70s, America was a really big untapped market for Lamborghini, especially because they weren't able to sell the Countach there due to America's bumper regulations, which basically required the front end to be at a certain height. And since they couldn't justify redesigning the whole front end, all hope was lost. That's until 2 American entrepreneurs by the names of Trefor Thomas and Josh Rarawala managed to get the car to meet US regulations by installing this thing. By the way, that's not a wing, it's a bumper, since it doesn't provide any downforce. Anyways, thanks to these guys, Lamborghini was able to start selling Countaches in America in 1982. meaning that every American spec Countach came with raised front bumpers, but they were pretty much removed immediately by dealers and owners the minute they got their hands on them. Number 42. The Lamborghini Urus isn't the company's first SUV. That honor goes to the LM002, or the Rambo Lambo, which was a massive 6,000-pound military-inspired vehicle that had a V12. Seriously, the Rambo Lambo had a 5.2-liter V12 from the Countach. It also had and still has the widest front tires ever fitted to a production vehicle, which had to be specially made by Pirelli since nobody else made 345s for a 17-inch wheel. Number 43. Ferruccio Lamborghini was the original Tony Stark, because when Ferruccio was in the Italian Royal Air Force during World War II, he served as a vehicle maintenance supervisor on the island of Rhodes. No, not this one, the one with the smaller population. Anyways, the island of Rhodes was a remote island off the shore of Greece, which made life particularly hard for a mechanic because parts and tools weren't accessible. But that didn't stop Ferruccio from somehow keeping all the military vehicles running on the island. That's why he was highly regarded as a master builder and mechanic in the army. Number 44. The Lamborghini Urus is the first and only Lamborghini to come with a functioning sunroof. Number 45. Now back in the day, Lamborghini wasn't a big fan of regulations and safety, and you could see that on the Countach, because when third brake lights became mandatory, they just stuck it smack dab in the middle of the rear window, which was already tiny, somehow making a safety feature a safety hazard. But the worst application was when passenger airbags became mandatory on the Diablo, and Lambo did this monstrosity. Like, what the hell, you could have at least tried. Number 46. Lamborghini made a golf cart for Pope John Paul II, and in true Lamborghini fashion, this no-door, open-space golf cart had a bulletproof front windshield, which is like wearing a condom to mask. Number 47. The Lamborghini Miura took inspiration from the Mini Cooper because when Lamborghini was assembling the Miura, they couldn't fit the large V12 inside the engine bay. That's when one engineer suggested to take the Mini approach and mount the engine sideways. So they did. And the Miura became the first and, as far as we know, still is the only production car to have a transverse V12. Number 48. The Lamborghini Huracan Evo tells you your prayer times and the location of the closest mosque because Lamborghini realized that they were selling an awful lot to the Middle East, and they decided to show their appreciation. Number 49. In the late 80s, Chrysler was working on the first-generation Viper, but since they hadn't built a car of this caliber before, they didn't want to take too many risks, so they decided to just reuse the V10 they were developing for their Ram pickups. And who would be better at tackling this job other than their new acquisition, Lamborghini? But Lamborghini was only able to squeeze 400 horsepower out of the 8-liter V10, although they did manage to make it lighter by recasting it in aluminum. Number 50. Lamborghini decided to reinvent the already perfectly practical keychain design on the Diablo by putting the key ring in the base of the key, and before you say it, it wasn't for knee room, since the ignition switch was on the steering column. They should really stop trying stuff. Number 51. The Lamborghini Huracan STO was driven around the world 3 times in a simulator before going into production. Number 52. Convertibles seem to be a staple of Lamborghinis nowadays, but it took a long time for the brand to sell its first convertible, even though they built prototypes as far back as their first model, most notably the one-off Miura Spider, which was built by Bertone to convince Ferruccio to launch a Spider line. And by the way, Ferruccio absolutely loved it, but Lamborghini just didn't know how to make a convertible that stayed in one piece, so they had to pass on that project. But they finally figured it out in 1968, when the Silhouette became the first production convertible Lamborghini. Number 53. For some reason, you can view your Huracan's VIN number from its gauge cluster. I don't know when or how that would be useful, but I guess having it is better than not having it. Number 54. Horacio Pagani, yes, that Pagani, was responsible for the redesign of the 25th anniversary Countach, which was also its most popular variant and the car that pretty much saved Lamborghini. But that wasn't Horacio's only impressive feat, because he also designed and built the Countach Evoluzione in 1987, which was made completely out of Kevlar and carbon fiber, because Horacio wanted to prove that composite materials were the future of supercars, which is definitely the case now. The Competizione had a top speed of 205 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 of under 4 seconds, thanks to its 490 horsepower V12 and its extreme low weight of only 980 kilograms. Now, if Lamborghini had put this car into production, it would have been the fastest car in the world and the first one to be made out of composite materials. But that honor went to the F40, which came out a year later, because Lamborghini didn't have the balls to build it. And not just that, they kept nagging that it wasn't safe. So the car underwent crash testing, which proved them wrong. But it also ended up completely destroying the one and only prototype. No wonder Pagani left. Number 55. The Lamborghini Diablo SV has this stupid little carbon fiber piece, which serves absolutely no purpose and can hardly be noticed. Well, you better hope it doesn't get broken or stolen because it costs over $1,000. Number 56. Early Lamborghini Miuras didn't have hazard lights, since they weren't mandated and Lamborghini has never had any foresight. But that's not all. Most Miuras didn't even come with side view mirrors. I don't know how they got away with that, but those mirrors you see were added by the customers. Number 57. The Lamborghini Aventador, which has a 700 horsepower 6.5-liter V12, has cylinder deactivation for fuel efficiency. Number 58. This is the coolest Lamborghini of all time. It's called the Sesto Elemento, and it was developed with Boeing back when their employees didn't mysteriously die. The coolest thing about this car isn't its 560 horsepower V10, it's the fact that it weighs only 999 kilograms since it was fully built out of carbon fiber. By the way, Sesto Elemento means the sixth element, which is carbon. And also, Lamborghini was supposed to build 20 units of the $6.5 million track-only supercar, but based on databases and registries, it's highly unlikely that they were able to build more than 10 due to lack of buyers. Number 59. The 2014 Gallardo was the last ever manual Lamborghini. Number 60. Lamborghini kind of, technically, maybe sued Roblox. It's a bit complicated. A couple of years ago, Roblox started removing any and all Lamborghini cars from their game, suggesting that Lamborghini might have sued them or threatened them with a copyright infringement lawsuit, but neither company has publicly confirmed these allegations. Number 61. Ferruccio Lamborghini was an interesting guy to say the least, and he had a particular skill for making a scene spectacular enough to woo people into giving him their money. Here's an example. When he went to the Geneva Motor Show to promote the Miura, he walked down to the floor with a beautiful girl on each arm and 2 ice cream cones in his hands, and he would have a girl lick one of his cones only for him to lick the same exact cone right after, and he would repeat the same move for the other girl, again and again and again. And for some reason, that unhygienic show of pee-pee strength persuaded the rich people in the 60s into buying his cars. Number 62. The normal Lamborghini Aventador has a middle button on its key fob which is used to open the frunk. But for some reason, Lamborghini removed that feature on the SVJ. But they didn't remove the button, they just left it blank. And if you press it, it will turn on the hazards and everything. The car knows it's supposed to do something, it just doesn't know what. Just remember that this is a $700,000 car. Number 63. Lamborghini still makes tractors to this day, and apparently they're pretty good. Number 64. 2 of the most legendary, exclusive, and expensive Lamborghinis are the Centenario and the Veneno, which both have roadster versions that surprisingly don't have roofs, meaning they are always convertibles, which is kind of unacceptable when you pay way over $1 million for a car, but that's just my peasant opinion. Number 65. Now usually shifting gears in a car is a pretty simple procedure, but Lamborghini thought it was too simple, so for the Murcielago, they put 3 buttons where the gear shifter should be. The first one is Sport Mode, which a supercar shouldn't need. The second button is blank, and the third one does nothing. But how do you go into drive? Well, you just use the paddles. Although you can't use the paddles to go into reverse. No, that would be too simple. To go into reverse, you have to push this button next to the light controls, which is an interesting design choice to say the least. Number 66. In 2021, the Lamborghini Huracan STO attempted to break the Nürburgring lap record. But before official numbers came out, Lamborghini fell into some hot waters because spotters at the track noticed that the STO wasn't actually stock. Since the car's windows were replaced with much lighter Lexan glass, the body gaps were taped off for less friction, and the engineers were spotted putting race fuel in the car, all of which would disqualify the car from a production lap record. And when the official numbers came out a couple of months later, people understood why Lamborghini got so desperate, because the STO was just 1/10 of a second slower than the record holder, the AMG GTR. Number 67. Lamborghini has been well known for borrowing parts from other cars. For example, the Diablo used the headlights from the 300ZX and the taillights from the Ford Think, which originally came from the Targo C40 tractor. The Miura also borrowed its taillights, but this time it was from an actual car, the Fiat 850 Spider. But the biggest culprit out of the bunch has to be the Murcielago, because its throttle body came from a Volvo, its turn signals from a Ford Focus, the climate control is from a Rover 45, and its ashtray is from an Audi A6. And that's just what we know of. Number 68. A few early production Countachs didn't have rear-view mirrors. Instead, they had a cutout in the roof with a periscope to look back, thus titled Periscopio. Number 69. Lamborghini surprisingly decided to let go of their unthoughtful designs for the Centenario by placing the turn signal further down so it wouldn't be blocked by the paddle shifter. But they still wanted their owners to have a taste of Lamborghini's what the f design language. So they placed the window washer stalk right behind the shifter on the other side. Don't ever change, Lamborghini. Number 70. Newer Lamborghinis have two cameras inside the cockpit, one behind the rear view mirror and one between the seats, so you could record your lap times and analyze your driving mistakes. Number 71. I know I've already talked about the Countach, but it's impossible to talk about stupid Lamborghini designs and not mention this car. For starters, only half of its window goes down, and it only goes down halfway, since Lamborghini couldn't figure out how to fit the glass inside the door panel. And if it's a sunny day, you have two options. You can either get blinded by the sun or get blinded by the absolutely massive sun visor. But nothing is as stupid as its wiper, which on paper should work really well since it's massive. But nope, the wiper stops right in the view of the driver, making it really hard to see what you're about to hit. Number 72. Ferruccio Lamborghini did not believe in motorsports, and he thought it was a waste of money. Also, when he was in charge, nobody in the company was allowed to bring up or create any cars for motorsports. Number 73. The Lamborghini Gallardo, which was the company's first large-scale success, took 16 years to be built, and it all started in 1987, when Lamborghini decided to build a smaller, more affordable supercar that didn't give up too much of its performance. So they first started by developing a prototype with a V10 engine. But since the car was small and Lamborghini's engines were on the larger side, the car was way too cramped and complicated. So they scrapped it and started again with a new prototype that was dubbed the Baby Diablo. And it was much better this time around, especially with its V8, meaning they finally could start trying to build this car. But by that time, they were acquired by VW, who told them to start again from scratch with a tubular aluminum chassis that could hold the V10. And with the help of Audi, they were finally able to introduce the Gallardo in 2003. Number 74. The hybrid Lamborghini Scion can be fully recharged in just 63 seconds because it was the first car in the world to use supercapacitors. Number 75. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Aventador. Yes, that's actually a thing, and it's an impressive thing. It's a $1.3 million 48-foot, 2,700 horsepower Aventador-inspired boat, and it has a top speed of 186 miles per hour. It was built because Gino Gargiulio, a business mogul, wanted his boat to match his one-of-a-100 Aventador 50th anniversary roadster. I'm not hating, but that's literally the definition of having too much money. Number 76. The most popular Lamborghini color is green, Verde Mantis to be exact, and it's all thanks to the Huracan since it looked pretty good in that color. Number 77. Lamborghini's convertible roofs are impressively delicate and precise. Take a look. Number 78. You see this big "fuck you peasant" logo on the SVJ? Well, that logo is actually an option, and it costs $10,000. It's not a sticker, by the way, it's painted in, but that still doesn't justify the price. Number 79. The Lamborghini Urus, especially the European specs, come with built-in retractable tow hooks, and they can tow up to 7,000 pounds in an Audi. Number 80. In 2023, Lamborghini announced that their workers on the production line will only work 4 days a week, and they tried to spin it like it was out of the kindness of their heart with the motto, "Work less, work better," even though they were forced by the Italian Workers' Union after a major strike. Number 81. Coming back to some weird Lambo logic, the Jalpa only has 2 AC vents for the occupants, but it has 3 vents for the windshield, although it has 4 different ways of controlling the speed of the AC fans, and they're scattered all over the dashboard, the same dashboard that tells you to use unleaded fuel only, which is usually a disclaimer that's placed on the fuel door. Number 82. You can rent out a Lamborghini race car and race in their Super Trofeo series for the very cheap price of $30,000 per race. Number 83. In 2017, Lamborghini collaborated with MIT to build the Terzo Millennio, which is theoretically a battery on wheels, meaning the car charges itself through its body. And not just that, it can also heal its own body if it gets cracked or damaged. By the way, I won't explain how it works because I don't understand it. Number 84. Lamborghini has a big presence in boat racing. They've even won 10 powerboating championships, including back-to-back wins from 2001 to 2007. And one of their coolest boat engines is a 9.3-liter diesel V12 which makes 700 horsepower. Now I don't have the money to do this, but if anyone does, please engine swap a Lambo with this V12. Number 85. Lamborghini has the Polo Storico program, where they can certify and restore their classic cars dating back to their first model. They also provide genuine parts that were built using the same methods and techniques that were used to build the original cars. Number 86. The Temerario was specifically designed to be tall person friendly, and it can comfortably fit a person up to 6 feet 6 inches long. Number 87. If you remember my last video, we talked about Ferrari being the first company to send their paint to space, and as it turns out, Lamborghini was consumed with jealousy when they heard about it. So they decided to send their carbon fiber to space that same year, to become the first automaker to carry out research on carbon fiber materials on the International Space Station. Number 88. Lamborghini was doing really well for a small period in the 80s, and just like a kid with too much money, they immediately decided to spend it on something stupid, and they built a motorcycle, which was called the Design 90. And when the bike was unveiled, they immediately received 50 purchase orders. But in true Lamborghini fashion, they ran out of money and only managed to build 6 units, including the prototype. Lamborghini's motorcycle division was later shut down when Chrysler took over. Number 89. The Lamborghini Urus was the first ever turbocharged Lamborghini. Number 90. The best looking Lamborghini in my personal opinion is the Murcielago SV, especially with its super cool, surprisingly not overdone aero package. But sadly, Lamborghini only made 186 units, even though they were supposed to build 360 units, because Lamborghini, as usual, miscalculated the amount of money they had and they put it towards developing the Aventador instead. Number 91. All new Lamborghinis have the Anima system, which is basically a supercomputer that controls every bit of the car's behavior, allowing the car to mold its electronics around the driver's driving style. That system also employs the special FlexRay protocol, which basically makes Lamborghinis unhackable. Number 92. Lamborghini has been building cars in the same exact factory since 1963. Number 93. The Lamborghini Urus broke the ice speed record on the frozen Lake Baikal in Russia in 2021, thanks to the driver Andrei Leontiev, who somehow managed to place his massive kahunas on the fine Italian leather and drive across the frozen lake at 185 miles per hour, with an average standing start speed of 70 miles per hour. Number 94. This is the Lamborghini EV1, which is an electric van. Now, we don't have any other pictures or any reliable info on this weird little van. All we know is that Lamborghini built it in the late 80s. By the way, we'd love to know the story if you do down in the comments. Number 95. Newer Lamborghinis have kind of lost the stupid, unnecessary, crazy nonsensical aura they used to have. But thankfully, Alex Choi has kept it alive with his twin-turbocharged Huracan, which he at some point put 30,000 LEDs on for Christmas. He also made a video last year where he rented a helicopter to shoot fireworks at him, which has gotten him in trouble recently. And he's currently facing federal charges for placing explosive devices on an aircraft. And if he gets convicted, he could face 10 years in prison. We hope those charges don't stick, and best of luck, bud. Number 96. The Temerario is technically Lamborghini's first front-wheel drive car, since only the 2 front motors provide power in all-electric mode. Number 97. Lamborghini has a winter academy, where they teach you how to controllably slide around in a Huracan in the Alps. Number 98. In 2019, Lamborghini rolled out a software update for the Urus, and that update caused a weird problem. Some of them forgot how to spell words, especially their own names since they spelled out Lamborghini. And you'd think that would be an easy problem to fix, but nope, it actually took them a couple of updates to fix it. Number 99. Lamborghini has held the world speed record 5 times, twice with the Miura, twice with the Countach and once with the Diablo, but they haven't held a speed record since 1990. Number 100. The Revuelto is the first hybrid electric vehicle with a V12, and probably for a good reason, because having a V12 kind of defeats the purpose of being a hybrid. Number 101. Lamborghini loves working with tech companies to create computer cases and even consoles, but their most notable creation is their Asus gaming laptop, which resembled the Aventador and came out in 2011. And at that time, its specs were seriously impressive, but it's comical looking back on it now since it had a 2nd-gen Core i7 and a 3GB GTX 460M. And we're done! Make sure to subscribe to see what we do next.